and welcome to Smeg and the Femmes, a podcast to discuss Red Dwarf from a different perspective. I'm Camille, and today I'll be talking about Series 4, Episode 1, Camille, with the help of my guest, the Desolated Quill. Hello, and welcome back to the podcast.
Oh, thank you very much for inviting me back. I'm very happy to be here.
Oh, good. Yeah, I wanted someone, who's a big fan of Crichton, because obviously these two episodes we're going to discuss are very Crichton-centric ones.
Yeah, and these two are particular favourites of mine, definitely.
Yeah, I must admit. It's odd. I hadn't thought of them as particular favourites, but then when I rewatched them for the purposes of this podcast, I really enjoyed both of them. They're both very. Actually, I think the word I'd use is sweet episodes. Because Yeah,
I agree with that. Yeah, they're very, very, very character centric and it's very much focusing on. I think Camille in particular really focuses on the relationships between the characters and their own, not neuroses, but the way they see themselves. And Crichton in particular, how he sees himself.
I definitely agree with you. They're very sort of character centric, and of course, the opening scene is a classic example of that. The very famous and popular "Learning to Lie" scene.
Yes, the infamous me.
It's a very funny scene, but it's also very touching, because it's established that Lister has literally been sitting there for hours trying to teach Crichton to lie.
yeah, and it's just such a great little. Crichton and Lister were like friends before, but this really kind of hammers home how far both of them have come in a way. Because I can't imagine. Obviously, Lister would do good things for Crichton and try to help him out, but I doubt Series 2 Lister would have spent however long it's taken to sort of sat next to him, going, "Listen very carefully, Crichton. This is an orange.
This is an orange. This is a melon, etc., etc."
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just so very heartwarming. Yes, that is word for word. I think.
Yeah.
And of course, it sort of sets up the Casablanca connection that we get later in, because Lister specifically says, lying can be noble, and he uses Humphrey Bogart lying to Victor Laszlo at the end of the Casablanca as a classic example of it. So it's neat the way they sort of set it up early on in the episode.
Absolutely, yeah, and just going off on the whole line aspect of it, I find that in many ways the most fascinating aspect of the show. How, because the whole idea of, robots becoming human and developing free will, that's obviously been done loads and loads of times in sci-fi. But this is the first one I've seen where there's sort of the questions asked, what makes us human, and usually it's our capacity to love and to feel and that kind of thing. But with Red Dwarf, it's our capacity to lie, and this episode really delves into why that's the case. It very much, like, if I was to pinpoint a specific episode that would detail Red Dwarf's entire philosophy, it would be this one, because it talks about, lying is used as a form of rebellion against the authority, which is, what Lister is trying to do with Crichton. It's not just trying to make him unpleasant, it's because he knows Rimmer has taken advantage of Crichton, and this is a good way to get him to be more independent and to stand up for himself. And it's just it's a very special episode for me.
Yeah, it's it's obviously it's sort of, as you say, classic Red Dwarf. I mean, because even though it's a sentimental episode, they sort of offset it by having humanity not only be the capacity to love, but also the capacity to lie and be unpleasant and so on and so forth.
Yeah, it's such a nuanced take, which you wouldn't typically expect from a sci-fi comedy. It's and that's one of the many things I love about the show, is that it's not pastiche. It's not sort of like broad. It's very much, it knows what it is, and it knows exactly the nuances and themes that it wants to tackle, and it does it in a very intelligent way. And I think that's why it's considered one of the sci-fi greats, I think.
Yes, I mean, I agree. Also, a thing I noticed, which obviously is something which happens when you sort of you watch them all in order for the purposes of a podcast. There's a parallel. I mean, obviously this is series four opener. There's a parallel with the series. Well, actually, several parallels with the series 3 opener backwards, because in backwards. Rimmer is teaching Crichton to drive, and he says, Rimmer at the time, that it's for the benefit of both of them. But in this episode, it's made quite clear that it's obviously for Rimmer's benefit, so that Crichton can take Rimmer, who can't drive himself, being soft-light, asteroid spotting.
Yeah. I know that connection. Yeah, you're right.
Actually, I did not notice it until I was doing the notes for this. But I mean, if you contrast that with Lister's obviously unselfish motivations for teaching Crichton to lie, it's a nice character contrast.
Yeah, and it shows. Well, again, it's that what Lister and Rimmer have always been the central dynamic, but this is a great way of exploring that dynamic in how they both view Crichton. Like Rimmer still sees Crichton as the servant, the one person on the ship that he has any kind of
over, yeah.
Whereas Lister sees Crichton as an equal.
Yeah, I mean, I would say Lister even sees Crichton as a mate. I mean, he wants a mate,
Yeah. I was just going to say, I never made that connection before, and you're absolutely right. Yeah, and it's in some ways it makes Crichton's rebellion when he does drive Starbug, all the more powerful, I think. Because it's he fails to say Smeghead, but he is at least able to sort of go, okay, there's someone in danger. I don't care what my superior says. I'm going to do what's right. I'm going to park the ship on a unstable planet while
explode. Yeah,
crying the entire time, even though it's so obvious that I am. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a very clever way of getting around it, by disobeying Rimmer by saying, I'm not doing this while actually doing it. We're back after a slight technical hitch. We were talking, I believe, about Kat's reaction to the learning to lie scene, and also Kat's amazing pink outfit in this scene, which really goes so well with the colourful fruit. It's a very colourful scene. This particular one.
Yeah. Yes, I mean the Cat's always had very, very lovely clothes, but yeah, this episode had the zebra coat as well, which I've always absolutely adored. Yeah,
it's great. Yeah, I mean, it's so good that they coloured it yellow and brought it back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's which was very sort of economical of them. Yeah. And yeah, you were saying about Cat's outfits. I mean, it's a combination of him raiding the ship's maul, and some of them he makes himself, or he adjusts himself. I mean, as late as the Promised Land, we find out that he made a puffer jacket from a parachute.
I would love to see that in a future episode. Actually, him in front of a sewing machine or something. Yeah,
I mean, they're not. They've never been shy about showing him, interested in pursuits which aren't considered traditionally male. I mean, the cat's never been bothered about that kind of thing at all, so I mean, why the heck not?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, we better not get too sidetracked. We better get back to the episode. Yeah. And I was going to say another sort of parallel with Backwards, which again I only noticed, because I'm watching these episodes back to back and taking notes and so on. Is of course a very famous scene in Backwards is the Wilma Flintstone scene between Lister and Cat, and in this episode we get the hammy hamster scene between Lister and Cat. It's a very obvious attempt to sort of recapture the magic.
It's just so absurd. So was the Wilma Flintstone one as well, but yeah, this for some reason seemed even weirder. Just I don't know how Rob Grant and Doug Naylor come up with half this stuff. This whole idea of Tales of the Riverbank, the Next Generation, but all this.
I mean, the idea of a hamster, being famous. I mean, okay, yeah, that could happen. But then Lister goes off on this weird thing about maybe he went off the rails, and did hamstergrams. I mean, it's just absurd. I mean, absurd in a good way, But it's not quite as memorable as the Wilma Flintstone thing, though. But yeah.
No, that one I think was probably more outrageous. It's the two of them talking about would they have sex with an animated character.
Yeah, they were kind of
the life and times of a hamster. They've been in space for too long. I think that's their trouble.
Basically, yeah, that is what they're setting up. That they've. Of course we know it anyway. But it's a nice, funny, in character way to sort of underline it. So I guess, yeah.
It reminds me a lot of Last of the Summer Wine, where it's the characters get into such a state of boredom that they basically just start talking absolute nonsense just to pass the time.
It does very much sort of capture that kind of absurd conversations that you have when you're stuck together, for a long amount of time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it is funny. I mean, it's not so iconic as Wilma Flintstone scene, but I guess it couldn't be. I mean, I think part of the reason the Wilma Flintstone scene is so iconic is because a lot of people do have crushes on Wilma Flintstone.
Yeah.
As cartoon characters go, she is attractive, I suppose.
Yes.
Well, that's all I'll say.
No comment. No.
Yeah, I'm not going to say anything more. I'll leave it there. Okay, let's move on to the next scene, which of course is Rimmer. Well, it's a continuation of this scene, but anyway, Rimmer appears on the screen and takes Lister to task because he thanks to Lister's foundation course in Advanced Rebellion, Crichton has
Yes, the droid's flipped. He kept waving a banana in front of me and calling it a female hardware.
I mean, I always laugh when it comes to that bit. It's just so hilarious.
Again, it's about those. It's about Crichton rebelling against authority, but from Rimmer's perspective, he just looks like he's completely flipped his lid. It's like, why is he talking about a banana on the ship? I really want to know the context of that as well. What happened before then that led to him whipping out a banana and calling it a female?
Is the implication supposed to be that Crichton took the banana with him as sort of moral support? The one that.
Yeah.
It could be, I guess.
Pointed that the banana didn't actually play a part in rescuing Camille. But maybe he uses that to help her over the chasm or something. It's like, I can't breathe. Here, grab this.
It is very, 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 very funny. It's anyway. Yeah, and of course, Smeagol. I mean, that's going back a bit. But Smeagol failing to call him a Smeg is also funny.
Yeah. Although he does manage to do it later on in the series in White's Hole. He eventually says it, and that's only because he knows that the timeline's going to get erased. So it doesn't matter if what he says at that point, because no one will remember. I always love that game. Always loved it.
That is a funny gag. Even though in classic sort of Red Dwarf fashion, they do kind of suggest later on in a later episode that they do remember that timeline, but because Lister refers to playing pool with planets, but that's just Rob and Doug being Rob and Doug.
Yeah. It's like
what's that? Uh-huh. Okay, so moving on to meeting Mechanoid Camille and the scene with her and Crichton, and the word I would use is cute, frankly.
Yes, yeah. I mean, it helps that Robert Llewellyn's wife plays Camille. So
yeah, I was going to say. I mean, just in case anyone listening wasn't aware, because I mean, obviously not everyone listening is going to be aware, and of course they're still together. They've been together for over 30 years, and it's all very sweet.
Yeah, so there's that natural chemistry there, but also what I like as well about Camille is, in many ways, she represents who Crichton wants to be, like, as well as being his ideal mate. She's also, in many ways, the person Crichton wants to be. She's independent, she's confident, she can lie. In fact, that's basically her whole character. Is basically she's the embodiment of a lie. Pleasure girls. They turn themselves into whoever the person most desires. So their whole existence is essentially a lie.
Yeah, so, I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
Yeah, so I just find that, and if you look at all the other, not to skip ahead too much, but if you look at all the other characters as well, like Camille is not only their ideal mate, but also in some respects the person they would want to be, given better circumstances.
Not to go too off on a tangent, but I was going to mention this anyway. We never. I was just going to say about we never find out what actually happened to Camille's crew. But I mean, given her nature, I doubt it's anything sinister. I imagine they probably just all died of old age. But I do wonder.
I always got the impression that it wasn't a human crew. It was like a Guelph crew almost. Like it was a crew of. That's always the impression I got. Like I don't think, because if she was part of the original crew, she would have to be like millions of years old, and I'm not sure if. I don't know what the scientific rationale is behind genetically engineered life forms of the Red Dwarf universe, but it's I don't know. Yeah, I always saw it as maybe in a Tawawi or something. She was part of that. That's how I always saw it anyway. But
it makes sense. I mean, she is obviously a type of Guelph. She says she's a good Guelph. Just a friendlier kind of Guelph than the Kinitawawi.
I think this is the first time they used the term Guelph as well, wasn't it, in the show?
I'm pretty sure it is. Yeah, I don't remember it occurring before.
Yeah, so it's quite a major bit of Red Dwarf canon being introduced. I know there's but that's just genetic experiment. They don't actually use the term Guelph.
Yeah, I do wonder what her function was on the crew. I mean, given the sort of Casablanca influence. Casablanca, you're probably aware, was not only set during World War II, it was filmed during World War II as it was actually happening. So I was just wondering whether Camille's function on her crew might have been sort of as a weapon of war, because obviously, what better way to disarm your enemies than by turning into whatever it is they most want to see,
Yeah.
And then the rest of the crew could attack.
Yeah, there are two ways of looking at it. Either she's the future equivalent of a prostitute or a sex worker, or she's a kind of spy. Her mission is to seduce the enemy and get any information that she can to help out the other side.
And of course, it's established that she literally cannot control how people see her. I mean, I guess she could turn into a green blob, But I mean, if she does that, then most people who aren't Crichton are going to be completely revolted, So you can understand why she would want to appear, as whatever who the person's looking at wants to see, because they're a lot less likely to attack her in that instance.
Yeah, I think the way I see it is that she can turn the ability on and off, but she can't, designate what she turns into when she has the ability switched on. So it's either on or it's off. That's the way
she doesn't have a sort of neutral default mode. Her default mode is the green blob,
exactly.
and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's either desire or blob mode.
Yeah. Poor thing. I mean, no wonder they write in that her husband Hector is looking for a cure for their condition, because that's a pretty dismal existence, really.
Yeah. It's. But I mean, the design of it as well. It's the 90s, so it's not going to be amazing, but it's. There is something quite. It's strange. It's because when I first saw it, it was kind of you're meant to be disgusted, and it is a little bit disgusting with the slime and everything. But there is an aspect of it that's quite cute as well. I don't know if it's to do with the personality or the acting, or if it's some of the design. It doesn't look so grotesque. Like, it looks grotesque enough that you can see why the cat, for instance, would react like that. But it's not to the point where you look at Crichton and you're sort of going, why on earth are you attracted to this? It's like there is something about the design that's endearing as well. I think it might be the eye stalk as well. That might help a little bit. It just looks almost cute.
Whenever I try and look at the blob, I feel so shallow, because I'm such a wimp, and I feel a bit grossed out. But I like her personality, and I realise obviously that's the whole point, that she is a lovely being, despite her gross appearance, and I get that that's the point,
Yeah, and I think. I think that's in some ways tied to why she ran away from Hector in the first place. It was to essentially try and live a quote unquote normal life with a regular person. I think, rather than if she's, even though Hector's trying to find a cure, you get the sense that if she goes with Hector, there'll always be blobs, and that won't change. But with Crichton, there's at least the sense that she can be, I guess in her eyes, that she can be something more. And I guess the big part of this, the big moral lesson of this episode is, in some ways, is to accept yourself for who you are, with all your imperfections. That's how I see it.
Yeah, it is a very sort of sweet and multi-layered episode. It kind of, if you're feeling warm inside about all the characters, really. They all come off really sympathetically here.
Yeah, absolutely. Wasn't this broadcast on Valentine's Day as well?
It was, and I would be remiss not to point out that there's one other episode that was broadcast on Valentine's Day, and you'll never guess which, or maybe you will.
Wasn't Dimension?
It was blue.
Oh, blue. It was. Of course it was.
don't know why. I mean, the TV schedulers chose to schedule Camille on Valentine's Day and Blue on Valentine's Day. I mean, that is all I'm going to say. I don't need to say anything else.
I wonder if that was deliberate on their part as well.
Must be deliberate with Camille, and presumably it was deliberate with Blue as well.
Oh, yeah, they knew. They must have known, yeah.
Presumably someone saw a description about the kiss and thought, okay, Valentine's Day.
Yeah. Yes, Rimmer and Lister are finally going to get together in a dream.
I mean, not to get sidetracked, I mean, I watched that episode live, I mean, having no idea what was going to happen, and I was like, what happened? And, in a good way, but I was amazed.
That one was slightly spoiled for me because I think it was there was it was either on the back of the DVD or somewhere else. I can't remember, but I definitely remember seeing a picture of Rimmer and Lister snogging. So unfortunately, that was that was spoiled for me before I watched the episode.
Right. So. Well, there isn't a picture on the back of the DVD, but they do heavily hint on the back of the DVD about the kiss. They say, Lister has a kiss, etc., etc.
Yeah.
That might be what spoiled it for you.
Yeah. So, that's a whole other episode.
Yep, yeah, I mean, don't worry, when I get to Blue, I will cover it in...
Oh, I cannot wait.
Great extensive detail.
Cannot wait.
Thank you. Okay, we'd better get back to the episode. And I did want to say one thing about Mechanoid Camille. I mean, she's lovely and I like her. But one thing I did notice is she has sort of spiky breasts. Are completely unnecessary.
I'm not sure how much of it is, because the way I saw it, again, if we're going on the idea that Camille also represents Crichton's idealised version of himself, I see like the way he talks about the realistic toes and the slide back sunroof head, which I'm not 100% sure how that's meant to help a mechanoid, but anyway, I just see that as kind of in some ways those are like design aspects that he would be envious of, and I suppose wait, what am I saying? Am I saying that Crichton would want breasts? Maybe he does, I don't know. We'll never know.
I hadn't thought of that before, to be honest. I mean, just thought of it as, whoever designed Camille's costume for, female robot, we better put some breasts on,
I got there isn't really female robots, at least not in the way Camille depicts it. I saw it as being, this is what Crichton envisions that ideal female robot to be, rather than that's what they actually are like. Because I don't know. I think the only other female robot I can think of was the simulant in Series 6 and Series 10. I think those are the only other female robot.
Actually, pardon me, sorry, but I do just refer to my notes. That's not the case because in Siliconia we do get more female.
Oh yeah. Yeah,
and they do not have the breasts.
And they don't. Yeah. Oh, okay. Well, that reinforces my point then. I think. Yeah. It's not what they are like. It's more what Crichton envisions when he thinks of his idealised mate. It's
I like that. I mean, to be honest, I thought it was. To be honest, I thought the ones in Siliconia not having breasts meant somebody had a word. Look, they don't have behind the scenes. Look, they don't have to have breasts just because they're played by actors. But I mean, I like your explanation. That Camille having them is because Crichton thinks that is what a female mechanoid would look like. I mean, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's my in-canon excuse.
And it's a good one. I do want to quote this line because it always makes me laugh. I can't beat your crewmates, but you don't know them. You like them. Well, some of them. Well, one of them, maybe.
Maybe. Yeah. Oh, that's Crichton, honest to a fault. I mean, I mean, even with, I mean, obviously he's referring to Lister, but at the same time, I like, well, that he admits that he likes Lister, but he also knows Lister is an acquired taste, to say the least.
I mean, I love Lister, but I mean, you know, obviously he has his faults like everyone else.
Yeah.
Okay, so time is moving on. So let's move on to hologram Camille, i.e. Camille as seen by Rimmer. Oh, one thing I did notice, which again I'd never noticed before, is when Crichton sees mechanoid Camille, we get this dreamy sort of romantic music, and when Rimmer sees hologram Camille, again we get the dreamy romantic music. But we do not get it when Lister sees his version or when Cat sees Cat.
That's true. Yeah, and I think that's... I think in some ways that is indicative of their characters as well. Like with Crichton and Rimmer, they both want to be accepted by another person. You know, they don't want to be seen as inferior or as or in Crichton's case, a servant. Whereas with Lister and Cat, they're both content with themselves. You know, Lister doesn't feel he needs to change for anyone or anything, and the Cat he thinks he's perfect. So when they see their ideal mate, it's not depicted in the same way, because it's not an idealised version of themselves. It's, you know, well, I'm already fine just the way I am, and look, here's someone here that perfectly complements that. Whereas with Rimmer and Crichton, it's in some ways that their ideal mates also represent the kind of person they themselves want to be. I mean, if you look at with Rimmer as well, with hologram Camille, it's, you know, he deep down he just wants to be accepted, and he wants someone who accepts him for like in 20th century telegraph poles and Reggie Wilson and all this kind of stuff.
I did wonder whether, you know, not getting the romantic music with Lister and Cat, because they were, you know, they were sort of seeing what they wanted on a purely sort of physical level, as opposed to a romantic level. You know, I mean, but I mean, I'm not sure if that's the case, but it could be.
I mean, I don't want to think about the implications for Cat if that's the case.
I know. I know. But I mean, to be fair, I mean, the scene with Cat does literally establish that he is the object of his own desire. You know,
which makes sense. At the same time, dare I ask, is there any fanfic of that, of Cat wanting to be with himself? There probably is somewhere.
I think there is, actually.
I'm sure there is.
Yeah.
I'm sure. Or let me put it this way: if there isn't, there will be after this. Because I'm just there.
If I recall correctly, there is a modest little G-rated vic of Cat kissing his version of Camille, you know. But I don't think there's any explicit stuff from what I remember. But I mean, you know, that's kind of probably for obvious reasons, I think. I.e., what Camille actually looks like when not being someone's desire.
Yeah. Well, presumably when they're having sex, they won't even view it like that either. They'll be having sex with their idealised mate rather than with a blob. I mean, of course, you know, in real life, like the mechanics would be very, very different. But in their own fantasy, it would be I'm having sex with this beautiful woman, you know, and it all works the way I expect it to. You know.
Yeah, I mean. I know you might find this hard to believe, you know, given that I write stuff, but I've actually never thought about, you know, about the crew, you know, in this episode having sex. I mean, I think partly, but I think simply because obviously I know what Camille really looks like, and that's too gross to contemplate, you know. But I mean, I'm sure someone somewhere probably has thought about it. I mean, there are sort of Camille Vics, you know, but I mean, most of them, from what I remember, do not tend to be explicit. They tend to be more sort of sweet and romantic and so on.
Yeah, I get that. Are there any? That's actually bringing up the shipping thing. Are there, are Crichton and Camille shipped? Like, do people still see them as, maybe in the same way that they see Lister and Kachansky or Lister and Rimmer in your case? Are there any of Crichton and Camille?
They are shipped, but they're not. I mean, they're not sort of particularly actively shipped, if you know what I mean. I mean, basically. I mean, if you know what I mean, when we have sort of, when we sort of answer questions about, who do you ship this character with, then the answer for Crichton would usually be, if anyone, would usually be Camille.
Yeah. No, I was just curious, because I don't typically keep up with the shipping side of it, but yeah, that seems ripe for ship. I mean, I know Rimmer and Nirvana Crane from Hollis ship are a major ship as well.
Yeah,
Crichton and Camille were a thing as well. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rimmer Nirvana, it's a reasonably popular ship. I mean, not as popular as Lister and Rimmer, but I mean,
Rimmer, yeah.
that is the main one for most people.
Oh, of course, yeah. I wouldn't expect any less.
Yeah. I should probably be fair and add, some people do ship Lister Kachansky. I don't not ship them.
Boring. That's not bad. Yeah.
I don't not ship them. I'm not against them or anything. It's just how I put this. Lister and Chloe Annette's version of Kachansky sadly do not have that kind of chemistry. In my opinion.
Oh, I don't want to get way too sidetracked. So we should
get a tad.
I fiercely disagree with that. But carry it. Go on. Yeah.
Well, it's okay. We should probably. If we have any time at the end, you can tell me that. But we should probably prep on. Yeah. So going back to hologram Camille, who is who's very beautiful and elegant, and makes a good sort of, particularly a female version of Rimmer.
Well, yeah, it represents the class aspect of it as well. Rimmer wants to be of a higher social status, and so here's this really refined, well-spoken, woman who, is into, 20th century telegraph poles because, of course, all people of taste are into 20th century telegraph poles.
Of course, yes. And interestingly, actually, he does actually, Rimmer, that is, say she's a spitting image of his sister-in-law Janine, who was married to his brother Frank and was a model.
Yes, you're right. Which again, it ties into he wants to be like his brothers, so it makes sense. He wants a wife like his brothers would have. It's really sad if you think about it.
Yeah, I mean,
it really. Bad.
Yeah, and actually, in the Better Than Life novel, it's carried to an even more extreme because Janine becomes Juanita, a sort of Brazilian teenage model who Rimmer marries, who is a sort of disguised version of his model sister-in-law, So I mean, it becomes even more extreme in there.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah, I remember you mentioning that last time we spoke. Yeah.
I guess at least hologram Camille isn't a teenager.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thank God. Yeah. Don't want to get into that kind of worms.
Yeah. Oh, I did want to comment that it is interesting that they established that hologram Camille is exactly the same rank as Rimmer, because you would think that he might want to rank above her, but no, he wants someone the same rank as him.
Yeah. Well, I suppose again the rationale for that, I suppose, is that if she were above him, then he would feel worthless, because he wouldn't stand a chance in hell. But if she's on the same level as him, then that would mean, I might be in with a chance.
I guess you could psychologically say he doesn't want someone who's a third technician, because that's too reminiscent of Lister.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it just suddenly occurred to me and I had to say it. Wait, yeah.
Oh, yeah, imagine if Camille turned into Lister and that was his ideal mate. How would Rimmer react?
yeah, to be honest, I mean, people who who ship them, have explained, the fact that he shouldn't. I mean, obviously the reason he doesn't do it is because that's not what the show is doing, But you can explain it in universe, but by saying that Rimmer is just that repressed that he conjures up a woman, and that is how I read it.
Yeah. Well, again, it's. I suppose it's the way it's phrased. It's your idealised mate, not your most desired mate. If we were to be pedantic.
Yeah, I suppose you could put it that way. I mean, like the way Lister idealises Kochanski and the way she and then the actual real person, who there is a difference.
That was very bizarre. That I remember doing a double take when the end credits scrolled up and it said Kochanski Camille, and I was like, wait, what? That didn't. She's nothing like Kochanski.
Yeah. So well, that moves us on neatly to Lister's version of Camille. Yeah, and apparently he was originally supposed to say that she reminded him of Kochanski, but that dialogue was cut.
I wouldn't like that at all. If they did that. That would have been. It would be a bit too kind of. Not quaint, but too tidy. That's the word. It's sort of like, oh, of course the woman he's pining for is his perfect soulmate. Of course it is, and all this kind of stuff. It would just be, I think the way they went with it, where it's just, although clearly the name's stuck in the credits, but I think the way they did it, where she's basically just, a woman who's, very anti-establishment, anti-authoritarian, and clearly, anti-authority, sorry, and clearly, has a very similar personality to Lister. I mean, I suppose you could do it, have it actually be Claire Grogan, but playing Kochanski as more like Lister.
I mean, I did wonder about that. I mean, I suppose probably the reason for that was you can't sort of do the Lister pining for Kochanski thing if you keep bringing back Kochanski's actress, really, can you? So I suppose it's obvious. If it had actually been Claire Grogan, then Lister would instantly have known, hold on, there's something wrong here because Kochanski's dead, you know what I mean?
But in fairness, he does find out, I think, within minutes that this isn't real because of the whole when Rimmer comes in and talks to Camille. So in some ways, I suppose you could have got away with it. I guess.
And she just tells him, okay, the game's up. You'd worked it out eventually. I'm a pleasure.
Yeah. And then Lister just sort of not shrugs it off, but it's just kind of like, oh, typical.
Mm-hmm, yeah. yes, it's funny that, yeah. I do want to just say a bit more on the character of Camille. I mean, obviously the name Camille, it has sort of obvious echoes of the word chameleon, which would make sense. But it is also the name of a famous fictional courtesan, i.e., the sort of 19th century version of a high class escort from a novel from a novel by Alexandre Dumas. So I mean.
I never would have connected that. Right? Okay.
Yeah, there was a successful film with Greta Garbo back in the 1930s, and I mean, not that I've seen it, but I mean, I just happen to know it because of that, and of course, obviously, that is very thematically appropriate, I mean, I mean, they're not only referencing Casablanca. I mean, I'm pretty sure they're also referencing this film because it fits too well.
Yeah, Grant Naylor are very well read, aren't they?
Yeah. I think clearly there were a lot of old films on TV when they were growing up, and they watched them.
Yeah. I mean, if you look as well, like Series 2, they reference things like like Easy Rider and Rebel Without a Cause and that kind of thing as well. They clearly know their cinema.
Yeah. Let me see. Oh yeah. Also, the character in the novel and the film, Camille. Of course, because she's a prostitute, she has to suffer, which means she's dire consumption. But she does get to have a doomed love affair first, which again, fits with the theme of this episode.
Yeah, you're right. So in some ways, she's doomed to be a blob forever, but at least it's heavily implied she's doomed to be a blob forever, but she at least gets a chance at, having a quote unquote normal relationship with Crichton, with the whole dating montage. Oh my god.
Yeah.
That's so much.
Oh yeah, I mean, sorry, I didn't quite catch that last bit. What could you repeat that?
I just said I love the whole dating montage. So much.
Yes, the dating montage. That is hilarious, and I mean, hilarious and touching. I mean, I love I think it is a Blue Danube music that's playing. Do 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 do.
Yeah. Oh yeah, when they're in Starbucks. Yeah.
It's amazing how well they sell this romance in just a few minutes, in a half-hour episode of television. I mean, it really does work really well.
Yeah, again, it's the chemistry of the actors, and also I think as partly as well, I'd say, although if you think about it, he probably doesn't have to do much, but let's give credit where it's due, that whoever is inside the blob, controlling the eye stalk and everything, it's...
Yeah, I believe it's an actor called Rupert Bates who also gets to play a human being in Time Slides. I think it is. He's one of Lister's bodyguards. Yeah. Credit to the actors who had to go inside those incredibly uncomfortable and hot costumes.
Yeah, it must have been like, because I hear, like in with Doctor Who, like the Dalek operators talking about their experience driving a Dalek and how it's just so uncomfortable. I imagine it must have been like that with Camille. It's just, like spending time inside an oven. You're just sweating buckets.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, it must have been unbearable. I mean, I guess probably not worse than Robert under the mask and costume, but still.
Well, pretty damn close, I would say. In terms of
a lot of hot, uncomfortable actors in this episode.
Yes, quite a few.
Okay, just going back briefly to Lister's version of Camille. My impression of her is sort of, cute biker chick. Obviously to sort of complement his sort of biker levers and so on. And as you say, obviously very sort of anti-establishment and sort of laid back, and hates Hammond organ music, etc.
Yeah. And Scouser as well, I think.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. She was actually played by Suzanne Ratkin, who was then Craig's girlfriend.
Yeah. I remember that from the behind the scenes thing. Apparently, she had trouble with her lines because I don't think she acted before.
Yeah. She was a singer rather than an actor, So I mean, she sort of made the mistake. I think Craig said she sort of made the mistake of learning all her lines and not his lines, and just sort of writing her lines, And so I mean, I'm sure in her position I would have done exactly the same. Only probably worse.
Same, yeah. Yeah.
I did. It did occur to me. It's a little bit kind of odd the way Lister is sort of, okay. We're the last two humans. We've got to restart the human race immediately. I mean, it just seems a little out of character for him to be so sort of cocky. Maybe always that me being biased in favour of Lister. I don't know.
I just saw it as basically, oh my god, there's a woman and I haven't had sex in 3 million years. Well, I know I'm going to be finding Kachansky at some point, but might as well have a bit of fun since she's here.
Yeah, and
What's a one night friends?
yeah, and to be honest, I mean, I'm glad because I mean, in some ways, because I mean, even though he's a bit, he goes a bit over the top. I mean, there is a tendency by the writers, to be sort of, Chansky is his true love. He can never have sex with another woman, and it's like, come on. I mean, when she's not around, why the hell not? I mean, when she's actually dead. I mean,
yeah, exactly. Let him let Lister, explore. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. That's just my personal opinion. Yeah. Oh, I mean, I know we haven't talked much about Pat's version of Camille, but that's because there really isn't anything to say except it's absolutely perfect.
And just the split screen high five, and then just him walking down the corridor and Lister going, "What did you see?" "Oh, just some gorgeous chunk of loveliness." And what a Danny John Jules owned that. I love it. I love that whole scene.
It was so absolutely, completely perfect. It really was, I mean, and it makes sense, I mean, it really does make sense.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, yeah. In series 2, he had to be physically pulled away from the mirror because he was admiring his own reflection. So yeah, this totally makes sense completely, and I especially loved when Camille does reveal to everyone that that she's been lying to everyone the whole time. And she goes to the cat, "Sorry, buddy," and cat just goes, "Heartbreaker."
Yeah, it's so cat.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course he would think of himself as a heartbreaker because he's cat. Yeah. Okay. We've gone past the 50-minute mark, so it's okay. I mean, we don't actually. One of the reasons we come to Discord is because we don't have a time limit, but we do usually try to sort of wrap up within the hour, especially since we've got another episode to record. So yeah, I mean. I'm glad you're having fun. I mean, I don't want to, sort of keep you here all evening, but I'm glad you're having fun. Okay, so we should probably move on to the ending, which is so perfect. I mean, they make it fit with the end of Casablanca so perfectly.
Yeah, it's both funny and tragic at the same time. What about us? We'll always have parrots.
Yeah, and in the film, we'll always have Paris,
Yeah, I was almost ashamed to say how much I laughed the first time I heard that.
Yeah.
That was that pun, that stupid pun.
By the way, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the original film, but it is very much worth watching if you haven't.
Years ago, I did, yeah. But it's been a very long time to the point where I don't really remember it.
Yeah, I mean. I tried to dig out my DVD actually, but unfortunately I couldn't find the bloody thing, so I'm going on memory.
So I mean, I still remember enough of it that I can pick out the things that Camille pays homage to. But as for the film itself, it's like I really should rewatch it again at some point actually, because it's been a very long time since I've seen it.
It is obviously a very famous, very considered a very classic film, and it holds up very well, So I mean, and as Crichton says, that Lister used to use it, sort of as an example of lying can be noble, and that is, definitely the thing that happened to me. I mean, at the end of the film, just at the end, as at the end of this episode, I mean. Humphrey Bogart's character lies to Ingrid Bergman's character to get her to go off with her husband, even though he's still in love with her. So I mean, it's obvious. It's an exact parallel with Crichton and Camille and Hector.
Yeah, it's really sweet and really sad. I mean, it's like I liked as well. I mean, in the cinema when they're watching the film together, it did kind of get to me a little bit because this was Crichton sharing a kind of a big part of himself with Camille. It's that his in some ways his vulnerability, like he admits that he's he's not able to lie, and he wants to, and this is part of his learning. So this is like a pretty big part of his life he's basically sharing with Camille. It's and then later on when he has to lie to Camille to get her to leave, and it's funny but in a very tragic way. It's the only way he knows he has to lie, but the only way he can do it is by referencing the film that he just watched. That's the only way he's able to do it, and it's funny because it's that we'll always have parrots pun and all that other stuff, but at the same time it's just so heartbreaking as well. Not just because of they're not going to be together, but also because that Crichton doesn't want to hurt her feelings, but doesn't quite know how, or isn't confident enough to do it, and so he has to quote the film in order to do it properly. It's very, it's very moving and very sad.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I mean, I can't really better the way you've just put it. To be honest, it works so beautifully, and then of course, being Red Dwarf, it has to sort of cut back to Lister and Crichton, and sort of end on a sort of mildly comedic note, But it doesn't take away from the touchiness. Although one thing I do have to point out is what I think is a bit of a continuity error. Because Crichton admits to Lister, he was lying to Camille, and Camille and Hector are still shuffling away, and you'd think
why? Yeah, couldn't you have at least have waited like just another minute just so they can get on the ship before you just
still here. Unless he happens to know something about them that they're very very deaf or something. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe it's a bit like they've got like one ear and it faces forward, so when your back's turned, it's like it's okay, we can say whatever we like.
It could be. You could sort of make that excuse. Because obviously he knows her well enough that he would know by then about that kind of thing. But I think it's much more likely it's just a continuity error.
Yeah, that's the one thing about it that does sort of kill it a little bit. It's kind of like, couldn't you have at least have waited like another 30 seconds? Just let them just on the ship and put the suitcases away before you out yourself.
Yeah. Alternatively, the cameraman should have gone in a bit closer on Crichton so we couldn't see the blob shuffling away.
Yeah, or maybe it's because of a time thing as well. Like maybe you could have had it that Crichton walks into another room and Lister's waiting for him, but maybe that was the intention, but then they ran out of time, so it's like, I'll just do it there, it's fine.
Yeah, it might be, I suppose, but I think the reason that they didn't do that is because they wanted to keep them in the hangar so that they could do ending shot with them walking away arm in arm. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship. I suppose that's why they did it.
Yeah, and with the smoke as well. Yeah, it's be a bit hard to do that in the science corridor.
Would, yeah. Oh, I do want to say one thing about the beautiful friendship film. Obviously, again, that's straight from Casablanca. But in the film itself, the Humphrey Bogart character and the character he's saying this to, Louis Renault, Claude Rains' character, you can read it, as them having a kind of homoerotic vibe, I'm not imagining it, it has been commented on, because he just say goodbye to his female true love, and he's going off with this man instead, so you can read it that way. And I
get that. It's I know there are some people that ship Lister and Crichton. I don't. I'm not comfortable with it personally. Lister and Rimmer I completely get, but Lister and Crichton, I don't know. There's just something about that just doesn't sit right with me. So I always see it as just them just being good friends, and it's basically just a nice little reference to the film rather than anything homoerotic underneath it. But I see why people would look at it in that way.
I mean, for what it's worth, I do actually agree with you. I mean, I don't ship them romantically. I mean, I like their friendship. I mean, I think it's lovely, you know. But I mean, I don't ship them romantically, even though I do personally think you can interpret Crichton as having a sort of one-sided kind of romantic crush on Lister. You can read it that way. But I mean, I don't ship them too.
Yeah, I see that. Yeah.
Mm. Right. Okay. So we really need to wrap up now. So I mean, I do. Yeah. I mean, this episode does wrap up perfectly because, you know, Lister acknowledges. I mean, Lister acknowledges that the events of this episode would not have happened if he hadn't taught Crichton to lie. You know, he's still pleased it worked. You know, and he even doesn't mind Crichton insulting him. You know, because I mean, he wants Crichton to be able to insult him.
Yeah. Exactly. It's a bittersweet episode for Crichton because on the one hand, you know, he's taken that first step into independence, but in the process, he's had his heart broken. So so it's you know, it's like I love you, but I hate you, but I love you, but I hate you. You know, dare you teach me about feelings?
I mean, it's perfect, you know, because I mean, you know, I mean, it fits perfectly with what Lister was trying to do, and it shows that, you know, he wasn't just sort of being, he wasn't sort of, you know, just sort of talking rubbish. He did actually mean it. He did actually want Crichton to be able to be unpleasant, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so just one more thing, which is scores out of 10. Both overall for the episode and also for how would you rate it for slashiness?
Oh, overall, I would say a 9. I think it's definitely one of the one of the really good Crichton episodes. I think definitely, and just a great concept overall. And I love what they do with it and how they explore the characters. And just a great little tragic love story as well, you know, which, you know, you wouldn't expect to necessarily see in Red Dwarf. In terms of slashiness, I really don't know, because it's very heteronormative. I find, you know, it's very much, you know, it's.
I know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, so in terms of, I guess, I mean, if we're going purely on the homoerotic undertone of the end, like maybe 3 or 4, maybe. I don't know. I don't think that's too slashy, that one, in my opinion.
Yeah. Basically, we're thinking along more or less the same lines. You know, I've given it 3 out of 10 for slashiness. I mean, because I mean, there is kind of something there between Lister and Crichton, you know, but I mean, a bit, you know, which so I'm not giving it some 0, you know, but it is not.
No.
It's not a particularly slashy episode. I mean, you know, I mean that's fine, which is fine by me. They don't all have to be slashy, you know. I mean, you know, it's just I find it fun to rate them this way.
Yeah.
And overall score out of 10. I'm giving it 8.5 because, you know, it's a lovely episode. You know, I always enjoy it more than I think I'm going to when I rewatch it for some reason. So yeah, it's a very, very nice episode.
Yeah.
Okay, so that wraps up this episode of Smeg and the Femmes. Thank you to Hologomet for technical help, and also thank you to my guest, the Desolated Quill. Hope you enjoyed listening. If you'd like to give us feedback, you can do so on Tumblr or Discord on the posts where I've linked to this episode. You can also email us at smegandthefemmes@gmail.com. I have one more thing to say now for the benefit of anybody who isn't on Tumblr or Discord and may have noticed some earlier episodes disappearing from Buzzsprout. This is because that site deletes episodes after 3 months. But don't panic, we have all the audio files and nothing has been lost, and we're in the process of re-uploading the episodes to our new YouTube channel, which has the same name as a podcast. So if you want to see those episodes again, currently Series 1 is on there and the rest will follow soon. So just search for Smeg and the Femmes on YouTube. And the next episode we'll be covering is DNA. I hope you'll join us then, but for now, Goodbye.